Welcome back. Tonight, we're venturing into the frozen heart of Russia, where the darkness holds secrets that have haunted locals for generations. In a country spanning 11 time zones, where winter nights can last up to 20 hours, there are places where the shadows seem to breathe, where footsteps echo long after they've stopped, and where the past refuses to stay buried. Russia's history is written in blood and tears, from the brutal purges of Stalin to the collapse of the Soviet Union, from ancient pagan rituals to modern-day disappearances. Each abandoned building, each desolate forest path, each forgotten tunnel holds stories that locals whisper about in hushed tones. Stories they'll tell you only after several shots of vodka, when the liquid courage drowns out their fear of speaking the unspeakable. Tonight, I'm sharing 4 types of places you should never, ever visit alone after dark in Russia. These aren't urban legends or campfire tales. These are documented incidents, police reports, and testimonies from those lucky enough to survive their encounters. Some involve the supernatural echoes of Russia's traumatic past. Others feature very real, very human monsters who use the darkness as their hunting ground. So dim your lights, lock your doors, and remember, in Russia, when Babushka tells you not to go somewhere at night, you listen. Because in the land of eternal winter, some places are colder than ice, darker than the Arctic night, and far more dangerous than any wild animal roaming the taiga. Let's begin our descent into Russia's darkest corners. In 2018, a group of urban explorers discovered why Moscow Psychiatric Hospital No. 15 had been sealed off for over 2 decades. What they found inside made national headlines, not for the historical value, but for what happened to them in those corridors where the walls still bore the scratch marks of former patients. The hospital, built in 1952 during Stalin's reign, was officially closed in 1995 after a series of incidents that the government never fully disclosed. Local records show that in its final year of operation, 17 patients died under mysterious circumstances, and 3 staff members vanished without a trace. The official report blamed structural instabilities, but declassified documents tell a different story. Alexei Volkov, a 28-year-old photographer from Moscow, had always been fascinated by abandoned Soviet architecture. On a cold October night, armed with only his camera and a flashlight, he decided to document the infamous Building C, the high-security ward where the most violent patients were kept. He entered through a broken window at 11:47 p.m. Security cameras from a nearby building captured him going in. He was never seen alive again. His body was discovered 3 days later by police after his girlfriend reported him missing. He was found in room 317, the former electroshock therapy chamber. The coroner's report listed the cause of death as cardiac arrest, but couldn't explain the defensive wounds on his arms or why his hair had turned completely white. His camera, when recovered, contained 347 photographs taken over the course of 4 hours. The final photo showed things that shouldn't have been there. Shadows moving against walls, faces in broken mirrors, and in the last image timestamped at 3:33 a.m., a figure in a straitjacket standing directly behind him. The most disturbing detail, police discovered that room 317 had been sealed from the inside with industrial-grade locks installed in 1995. There was no way Alexei could have entered that room on his own. Investigation into hospital records revealed that room 317 had housed Dmitry Zakharov, a patient admitted in 1987 for violent psychosis and cannibalistic tendencies. Zakharov died during an unauthorized experiment involving high-voltage electroshock therapy combined with an experimental drug called aminazin. His death was covered up, listed as natural causes. Staff reported seeing him in the halls for weeks after his death. Local residents still report seeing lights in Building C, despite the electricity being cut off decades ago. In 2020, the government installed motion-activated cameras around the perimeter. The footage, leaked by a security guard, shows figures moving through the windows of the 3rd floor, the floor that partially collapsed in 2001 and is physically impossible to access. The psychiatric hospital represents hundreds of similar facilities across Russia, where Soviet-era medical experiments and patient abuse created places so saturated with suffering that even hardened police officers refuse to enter after dark. These aren't just abandoned buildings, they're tombs of the forgotten, where the line between the living and the dead blurred long before the doors were finally locked. While the 1959 Dyatlov Pass incident remains Russia's most infamous mountain mystery, it's far from the only one. The Ural Mountains, stretching 500 kilometers from the Arctic Ocean to the Kazakh steppes, have claimed hundreds of lives in ways that defy explanation. Local Mansi people have names for certain peaks that translate to Mountain of the Dead and Where Eagles Dare Not Fly. They have good reasons for these names. In 2013, experienced hiker Marina Konstantinova ignored local warnings about hiking alone through the Kholat-Syakhl area, the same region where Igor Dyatlov's group met their mysterious end. Marina was a survival instructor, winter camping expert, and had completed over 200 solo expeditions. She set up her base camp at coordinates that locals had specifically warned against, dismissing their concerns as primitive superstition. Her satellite phone recorded 17 calls to emergency services over the course of one night. In the recordings, her voice grows increasingly panicked. She reports orange lights following her, footprints that appear and disappear in the snow, and voices speaking in a language that hurts to hear. The final call at 4:17 a.m. is just screaming and what audio experts describe as low-frequency vibrations inconsistent with natural phenomena. Search teams found her camp 6 days later. Her tent was slashed from the inside, mirroring the Dyatlov incident. Her body was discovered 500 meters away, barefoot in 30-degree Celsius weather. The autopsy revealed massive internal injuries consistent with high-pressure trauma, but no external wounds. Her journal's final entry read, "They're not lights, they have faces, the mountain is screaming." But Kholat-Syakhl isn't the only deadly peak. Mount Otorten, which locals call Don't Go There, has claimed 14 lives since 2000. Each victim was found with similar symptoms: massive internal trauma, signs of extreme fear, and positioned in ritualistic patterns that predate Russian civilization. In 2019, a government geological survey team discovered ancient petroglyphs in a cave system beneath Otorten. The symbols, when translated by linguistic experts, appeared to be warnings about sky demons and the burning cold that thinks. The Russian military maintains restricted zones around 7 peaks in the Urals. Satellite imagery shows regular activity at these sites, including structures that don't appear on any official maps. Locals who've worked on these installations report underground facilities extending deep into the mountains and experiments involving acoustic weapons and consciousness research. They also report a suicide rate among workers that's 400% higher than the national average. Indigenous guides refuse to take tourists to these areas after September, when the mountain hunger begins. They speak of the calling season, when the peaks emit subsonic frequencies that draw hikers off safe paths and into areas where compasses spin wildly and GPS devices show locations that don't exist. 23 hikers have vanished during calling season in the last decade. None have been found. The mountains remember every death, locals say. And sometimes, on clear nights when the aurora borealis paints the sky, they can hear the mountains singing, a sound that drives animals to flee and makes strong men weep. It's a song of all those who entered the peak seeking adventure and found something ancient, hungry, and patient instead. Beneath Moscow's bustling metro system lies a secret. Metro 2, Stalin's classified underground network. While the government denies its existence, maintenance workers tell different stories. Stories about tunnels that shouldn't exist, stations that appear on no maps, and the people who vanish when they venture too deep into Moscow's underground labyrinth. In 2016, metro maintenance worker Yuri Petrov was conducting routine inspections in the tunnels between Teatronnaya and Tverskaya stations. At 2:34 a.m., his radio went silent. Security footage shows him entering a maintenance door that, according to official blueprints, opens onto a wall. His body was found 7 days later in a sealed tunnel beneath the Kremlin, 14 kilometers from where he vanished. He had aged approximately 20 years in 1 week. The tunnel where Yuri was found doesn't officially exist. It's part of what urban explorers call the ghost network, tunnels that appear and disappear, stations that can only be accessed at specific times, and trains that run on no schedule. Workers report hearing announcements in the dead of night for stations that were never built: next stop, Soviet Glory Station, or approaching People's Triumph Terminal. Database searches reveal that these were proposed station names from 1,935 blueprints that were never constructed, or so the records claim. Viktor Mikhailov, a 15-year veteran of Moscow metro maintenance, broke his silence in 2019 about what workers call the night shifts. These are unofficial assignments where workers are paid triple wages in cash to perform maintenance in sections that don't appear on any map. Victor describes descending through hidden doors into tunnels lined with pre-Soviet architecture where the walls are carved with symbols that predate the Cyrillic alphabet. The deeper you go, the older it gets, Victor explained. We found a chamber beneath Arbatskaya that had Byzantine mosaics. Another tunnel had cave paintings. But the worst are the new sections, concrete poured in the 1950s over things that should have stayed buried. You can hear them moving behind the walls. That's why the concrete cracks. In these forbidden tunnels, workers report consistent phenomena: electromagnetic interference that kills electronic devices, temperatures that drop 20 degrees without explanation, and the sound of trains running on tracks that were removed decades ago. Security cameras malfunction in specific patterns, always failing when workers report seeing passengers waiting at abandoned platforms, figures in clothing from different eras of Soviet history, standing perfectly still until approached. The most terrifying discovery came in 2020 when a water main break revealed a hidden station beneath Lubyanka. The station, pristine and fully functional, contained a single train with 1,953 manufacturing dates. Inside the train, investigators found 47 passengers, perfectly preserved, seated as if waiting for departure. Documents in their possession indicated they were Communist Party officials who vanished during Stalin's purges. The station was immediately resealed by federal order. Metro workers have an unwritten rule: never follow the red service lights. These lights appear randomly in tunnels, leading away from known routes. Those who follow them report finding vast chambers filled with abandoned military equipment, medical facilities with operating tables still bloody, and archives containing files on citizens who never officially existed. One explorer discovered a room filled with hundreds of television monitors showing live feeds from apartments across Moscow, apartments whose residents had no idea they were being watched. The Moscow Metro moves 9 million people daily through its official tunnels. But in the darkness between stations, in the maintenance shafts and service corridors, another network pulses with secrets from Soviet experiments, pre-communist occult practices, and things that were old when Moscow was young. Every night, maintenance workers descend into this darkness, knowing that not everyone who goes down comes back up, and those who do are never quite the same. In the Arctic city of Norilsk, where winter temperatures plunge to 50 degrees Celsius and the sun doesn't rise for 6 weeks, stands Apartment Block 19, a Khrushchevka abandoned since 1997. These Soviet-era apartment buildings were meant to last 25 years. Block 19 survived 38 before something happened that made even Norilsk's hardened residents refuse to enter it. The trouble began in January 1997 when residents started reporting neighbors who weren't there. People heard families in long empty apartments, saw lights in windows of flats that had been vacant for years, and found fresh cooking smells in hallways where no one had lived since the Soviet collapse. Then came the night of January 17th, when all 127 remaining residents fled the building in 46 degrees Celsius weather, many in their nightclothes. Police reports from that night are inconsistent and heavily redacted. What's known, emergency services received 43 calls between midnight and 3 a.m. Residents reported their apartment walls breathing, doors opening into rooms that shouldn't exist, and most disturbingly, their dead relatives sitting at kitchen tables, inviting them to join for one last meal. By dawn, Block 19 was empty. 3 residents who returned for belongings were never seen again. In 2015, paranormal investigator Anastasia Voloshina led an expedition into Block 19. Her team's findings, documented in academic journals, defied explanation. The building's internal layout had changed. Apartments that should have been identical showed different configurations. Third-floor flats opened onto fifth-floor corridors. Stairwells led to floors that the building didn't have. Her magnetometer detected magnetic fields, 0 times stronger than normal, concentrated in patterns that suggested deliberate placement. The most disturbing discovery was in apartment 58. Inside, Anastasia's team found a family of 4 sitting at a dinner table, frozen solid, with a meal that appeared freshly served despite the 40 degrees Celsius interior temperature. The family, the Krugovs, had died in a car accident in 1983, 14 years before the building was abandoned. Yet here they sat, in an apartment they'd never lived in, around a table set with food that showed no signs of decay. Investigation revealed Block 19 was built on the site of a former Gulag cemetery. During construction in 1959, workers reported finding mass graves containing thousands of bodies. Stalin-era protocols demanded construction continue. The bodies were simply covered with concrete. But that doesn't explain what civil engineers discovered in 2018. The building's foundation extends 7 stories underground, far deeper than any Khrushchevka blueprint allows. Ground-penetrating radar revealed vast chambers beneath the building, along with what appeared to be a complex tunnel system connecting to other abandoned blocks. Local police maintain a 24-hour guard around Block 19, not to keep people out, but to monitor what comes from within. Officers report seeing figures in the windows, always on floors that should be empty. In 2019, thermal imaging captured 47 heat signatures inside the building during a 52-degree Celsius night. A tactical team sent to investigate found no one, but discovered fresh footprints in the dust, children's toys arranged in playful scenes, and in one apartment, a television playing a news broadcast from 1986. The block's pull extends beyond its walls. Residents of nearby buildings report recurring nightmares about being invited to dinner in apartment 19. Some wake to find their apartment doors open, their feet dirty with dust that matches Block 19's unique composition. 17 people have vanished from surrounding buildings since 1997, always during the polar night, always leaving behind the same note, "Gone to dinner with family." City records show 5 other Khrushchevkas in Norilsk abandoned under similar circumstances. Satellite imagery reveals heat signatures in all of them, despite having no power for decades. The government classifies these buildings as Category X structures, a designation that doesn't officially exist but appears on documents that surface occasionally, usually just before another Arctic city reports a block where the walls have started breathing and the dead have come home for dinner. In Norilsk, where the living barely survive the Arctic night, Block 19 stands as a reminder that some buildings become more than concrete and steel. They become hungry, they become patient. And in the polar darkness, when the aurora borealis casts its alien light over the frozen city, they wait for visitors who remember what warmth feels like, visitors who might accept an invitation to stay forever. These 4 locations represent just a fraction of Russia's dangerous nighttime destinations, from the radioactive forests of Chernobyl's fallout zone to the bone-filled catacombs beneath St. Petersburg, from Siberian villages where residents lock themselves in after dark to offshore drilling platforms where workers report things from beneath. Russia's vast territory holds more darkness than any one person could explore in a lifetime. Remember, when Babushka warns you not to go out after midnight, when the taxi driver refuses to take you to certain addresses, when locals cross themselves at the mention of specific places, listen. Because in Russia, the night doesn't just hide dangers, sometimes it creates them. Stay safe, stay in the light. And whatever you do, never venture into these places alone after dark.